بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد أشرف الأنبياء والسيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم أجمعين. نويت تعلم وتعليم وتذكر وتذكير ونفع وانتفاع وإفادة وإسفاد والحث تمسكي في كتاب الله وسنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وصحبه وسلم وضوائد الهدى ودلالة الخير ابتغاء وجلاء مدارج وقربي ثوابه سبحانه وتعالى والحمد لله. First of all, Jazakallah khair, brothers and sisters, for coming to this auspicious event. I'd like to first of all thank the organizers who helped structure and organize this program, Omar Ahmed being the one in charge of running the program, also Muhammad Sohan, Omar Sohan, Nisreen and Nizneen, and all the other members who helped organize this event. Jazakallah khair, may Allah bless you. Also those who have come to benefit and learn. May Allah reward all of you, inshallah, and reunite us in the next life in paradise, inshallah. Ameen. So inshallah, the structure, this is a workshop, so there's a lot of work and there's a lot of information and knowledge, inshallah, and that's the whole point. And one of the most difficult things as a teacher is to teach while fasting. It's one thing when you're listening to a lecture or you're hearing or you're trying to get through or you're working, but to teach and give you energy and inspiration while fasting is actually difficult, quite difficult itself. But alhamdulillah, by the permission of Allah, we'll try the best that we can. The structure, inshallah, of this program is about 45-50 minutes of knowledge, inshallah, focusing first on the merits of Ramadan, the unique special merits of fasting and in Ramadan. And then after that, we'll have a little break, 10 minutes or so, and just kind of stretch. We would have refreshments, but it's Ramadan, so we can't. But we would have, do that. But a little 10-minute break, and then we'll come back, inshallah, and then do the fiqh of Ramadan. So learn the rulings, what breaks your fast, what obligates fast, when is it permissible to break your fast, etc. So we'll go over that stuff, inshallah, in the second session, which is very important, so inshallah. And then we'll have a Q&A at the end for anybody who has any remaining questions. And so we have obviously brothers and sisters, and on the sister side, my wife is there to answer any questions if anybody has any about fasting. And during the Q&A, she'll probably run the sisters, and I'll probably run the brother side. But inshallah, in the actual program itself, will be just me speaking in the beginning. So, starting out with definitions, as it's important to know in Arabic what the meaning of words are and where they come from. So let's first look at the month that we're in, Ramadan. Where does this come from? What word is used? And the word Ramadan comes from the word Ramda. Ramda literally means a scorching hot piece of earth. And the reason why they named it Ramadan is in pre-Islamic times, there was a time when it was a summer month and it was extremely hot and the earth was very hot, and so they named that month Ramadan, after Ramda, scorching earth. And then after that it's been known as Ramadan, and then when Islam comes it obligates fasting in the actual month of Ramadan. So that's where initially it comes. Also, it's important to know what Sawm means. When I ask you what is the word Sawm or Siyam, fasting itself, what does this mean and where does it come from? So, Sawm linguistically, it means al-imsak, to refrain from or to abstain from something. That's linguistically. It can be from anything. And in terms of what does it mean, Shar'an, which means legally, according to the Islamic definition, what it is imsak makhsus ala wajh makhsus bi niyatin makhsusa. It is a specific type of refraining from something in a specific way with a specific intention. So what is the specific refraining? You're refraining in a specific way. Well, it's in the month of Ramadan. It's from dawn to sunset. You're refraining from food and water and also intimacy with one's spouse, etc. during the daytime of Ramadan. That's a specific way, and there's other things. And then it would be niyat and makhsusa with a specific intention. And we'll get more into this in the fifth portion, but it is required every night before the next day that you make an intention to fast the next day. There's a difference of opinion between some of the scholars between when is the last time you have to make that intention. And the Shafis, you have till dawn. You have until Fajr enters to make the intention to fast the next day. And you have to do that every single night before the dawn comes in for your fast to be valid. And then the Hanafis, I think they have till Zawal, to the zenith of the sun, to make that intention. So there's a difference, but the intention is necessary. So this is what Sawm means, and this is what Ramadan means, and this means that this is the fourth pillar of Islam. This is an integral of our religion, as Siyam, and it is something, what is the fourth pillar, and it is something that is in the 9th month of the lunar year. So we have the task of the 9th month of the lunar year, according to the Hijri calendar, is when Ramadan falls. Remember that there are 12 months in the year, but there are also, those months are 354 days, 9 days less than the solar calendar, which is 365. Huh? Or is it, 11 days, sorry, 11 days less. 11 days less than the solar calendar, which is 365, so 354 days a year. Therefore, every month is going to be 29 or 30 days. We don't have 31 days. But in that 9th month is the month of Ramadan. And what it means, he says, the 4th pillar of Islam is to refrain from everything that breaks the fast in the daytime of Ramadan, and so forth. And we'll get into exactly what are the things that break our fast. And it gets pretty interesting when we start talking about certain things like injections or patches or asthma, etc. We'll cover some of these things in the 5th Masala, inshallah. Preparing for Ramadan, obviously we're already in Ramadan, but some of the things that some of the scholars will mention about how to prepare for it. If you look for it, it says, prepare for the first night of Ramadan, for in this night Allah gazes at His creation, a special gaze which is unique to His ummah. Allah will never punish the one upon whom He gazes. This is narrated by Bayhaqi. Again, we've already passed the first night of Ramadan, but the first night Allah gazes at His creation. If He gazes at you or at His creation, then He will never punish those individuals in this life and the next life. This is narrated by Bayhaqi. And I'm just telling this, inshallah, obviously it's past, but for next year, may Allah make us of those people this year, and may Allah make us of those people next year, inshallah, and every year to come, that we prepare for it. That first night is very important. The Arabs, they say in a proverb, they say, "Men lam takun bidayatu muhriqa, lam takun nihayatu mushriqa." Whose ever beginning is not, does not start with fire, a burning fire. Like you have a burning passion about something, then their end will not be fruitful. Their end will not be enlightened. And so inshallah we start strong and finish strong. Also the end in Islam is important, right? The Prophet ﷺ, he says, Al-a'mal bi khawatimiha. Actions are by their endings. It's not so much how you begin something, as much as how you end. Some people, they begin their life as non-Muslims, but they end as Muslims. The Sahaba, they all were converts. Radiallahu anhu. So it's not so much how one begins, it's more how they end. And there's another tradition. Every night Allah decrees the safety of 600,000 people from the fire. In some narrations, 1 million. Every night of Ramadan, Allah saves 600,000. One narration says 1 million people from the fire. Then on the last night, He decrees the safety of the same number of people that He decreed on every night of the month. He also decrees the safety of others during the day, particularly at sunrise and sunset. So at the last day of Ramadan, all the people that He saved throughout the entire Ramadan, He saves that number, which is a large number. Some narrations would say, 30 million. May Allah make us of those. We must welcome the month with joy, since the Prophet ﷺ said, if my ummah knew what was in Ramadan, they would wish that the whole year was Ramadan. If you really knew the gifts and the spiritual dissensions that come down in this month, you may be feeling it already. You may feel closeness to Allah, a spiritual high. You may feel like you're going through that struggle, that effort, and you feel that there's a spiritual benefit to this. That itself is specific in the month of Ramadan, and if you knew what was in Ramadan, you would wish the entire year was Ramadan, as the Prophet ﷺ said. The Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they treated the entire year as if it was Ramadan. How did they do that? They would spend 6 months preparing for Ramadan before it came. And then when it came, they would work as hard as they could to please Allah Azza wa Jalla and worship Him. And then 6 months afterwards, they would bid Ramadan farewell. So their whole year was Ramadan. And this brings it back to an important state, my brothers and sisters. Ramadan is not a month, necessarily. Ramadan is a state with Allah. You see, it's not so much being Ramadan Muslims that, in Ramadan we practice and we stay away from haram and we do all the good stuff and pray in the nighttime and, obey Allah. That's not just in Ramadan. That's in and outside Ramadan, before and after Ramadan. Therefore, it's supposed to develop a state with you and Allah Azza wa Jal to have a binding, close relationship so that you make your entire year Ramadan. Therefore, year by year by year, your whole life becomes Ramadan, and therefore you maintain a quality state with your Lord. That's the goal of Ramadan. And that's something that requires a lot of effort and struggle. It's not designed to be easy. That's the whole point. Because the more you struggle for something, the more attachment you have to that thing that you're struggling for. If in this month you feel pain and suffering from not eating and not drinking, and you feel tired and you feel weak, and you say, I got work, and then I got to come home, I got fasting, and then the qiyam and the taraweeh, and all these things, and it's difficult, and the nights are very short, and the days are very long. If you're finding that that's a good thing,
You should want that and want more of that, because that will increase your relationship with Allah. You will have a stronger attachment to your Creator. You have a stronger attachment to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and his Sunnah. You will love this religion. And that's why you see, like some of the scholars they mentioned, when a mother has a child, she goes through the pains of 9 months of pregnancy, childbirth and labor. Then she has the baby, which is painful. And then she feeds the baby for 2 months, or 2 years, and then she continues to take care, raise, and change the diapers and clean and so forth the baby throughout the lifetime. Why does she have such an attachment to that child? Why is she less likely to leave her own child than the husband is? Why? Because of her attachment, the pain and struggle she put, the sacrifice she gave for that child. And that's why if we give that same sacrifice and we go through pain and effort and so forth in religion, we'll have that attachment to Allah. We actually studied in sociology. We studied in sociology that a child was stuck underneath a car. And the father came first and he tried to lift the car up so they could remove the child. And he couldn't do it. And then the mother came hysterically with the adrenaline rush, and she came and she lifted up the car. And they removed the child from underneath. How is the mother able to do it but not the father? Her love and attachment to her child, because of that sacrifice she went through. And so we're less likely to therefore leave deen, to leave the sunnah, to leave the way of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ if we have this strong attachment to them. My grandmother-in-law, she converted to Islam, white American, converted to Islam at 71 years old, which is rare in and of itself. After she converts to Islam, right, now she's 81, for 10 years, as a convert, as an older convert, she has been fasting every single day of Ramadan, including in Yemen. You know why I studied in Yemen for 7 years? We're talking 135-degree temperature. Okay, she would fast throughout the days in Yemen and also in America. And she prays tahajjud every night. So what's our excuse? I used to pray in Taraweeh next to people who had one leg in Yemen. I prayed next to a guy who's blind. He's first one up every time. And he goes to the last. He's the last one to leave. Blind man. He couldn't see. I used to pray next to people who were stuck in ruku'. They were so old and they had such a hunchback, they were stuck in the ruku' position the entire prayer. And they prayed all 20 rak'ah. Then what's our excuse? 4 years ago, the first day of Ramadan, in Yemen, 135-degree weather, right when Fajr enters, electricity shuts off. The entire day. I sweated the entire day. All the way, and my lips were parched, I couldn't speak, I was dry, I was dehydrated, I couldn't sleep because it was so hot. But the entire day, me and everybody else, because the electricity went on everybody, fasted that day. See, this is the struggle it requires. And it's not designed to be easy in that sense. Unless, of course, one is traveling or sick or old. There's dispensations, obviously, to these things. One of my in-laws, it can be tough, right? One of my in-laws was cooking. And she wanted to taste the food that she was cooking. And we know that tasting food in Ramadan is makruh while you're fasting. Not consuming, just tasting it. And so she was cooking. She went to taste the hot sauce to make sure it wasn't too hot. She tasted it and it was really hot, and her mouth was on fire. Now she forgot that, and she actually swallowed some. She actually forgot she was fasting, and so she actually took a bite of the thing, swallowed the hot sauce, and her mouth was on fire. And then she went to get water, but she forgot. She went to get water to wash it down, and then she remembered right when she had the water in her mouth that she was fasting. That's a bad time to remember, isn't it? The rest of the day is That's a tough time to remember, right? You should have done the opposite. So he continues and he says, recite, what are some of the advices in Ramadan? Recite the Quran, reflect, it is the month of the Quran. Ahl al-Quran, Ahl Allah wa khasatuhu, the people of the Quran are the people of Allah and His special servants. Recite, this is the hadith, recite the Quran, reflect on its meaning in abundance, bestow prayers upon the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ in abundance, especially in the occasions as he has taught us. Prepare for Ramadan by improving your relationships with your family. This is also an important month to kind of realign. Sometimes we get off track and we need to realign on the straight path and practice in our religion and follow the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, the greatest of all mankind. So prepare for Ramadan by improving your relationships with your family. This is that opportunity to connect ties with family and not to be somebody who distances themselves or cuts off that relationship with their family or their relatives or their neighbors. Your neighbor in Islam is 40 houses in every direction. Right? We have to give them their rights, and starting with our own family as well. Improve your etiquette towards them, and if they have passed away, pray for them and donate the reward of the good deeds to them. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he was asked by Sayyidina Aisha, what should we ask if we know it's Laylatul Qadr? If you know it's the night of power, what should you ask? What should you say? Sayyidina Aisha is asking the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and his response was, he says, say, Allahumma innaka afuun tuhibbul afwa fa'fu anni, or afu anna. He says, oh Allah, truly you are pardoning, you love to pardon, so pardon us. This is a sunnah dua to say every night of Ramadan, because you don't know what night exactly is going to be Laylatul Qadr. So that's some of the preparation for Ramadan in advance. And then I wanted to talk about the origin of the prescription of it in our religion. Where does it come from? What's the ayah, what's the dalil, what's the hadith about Ramadan in terms of the merits and so forth. So we first look that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says in the Quran, يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. So we have the actual reason why we fast. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says in the Quran, O you who believe, that it is prescribed upon you to fast, as it has been prescribed upon those who came before you, so that you can have God consciousness, so that you can increase in taqwa. And we said earlier the definition of taqwa, according to Imam Ghazali and others, is ijtinab nawahi la wa imtithal nawahi, obeying the commandments of Allah and avoiding His prohibitions. The whole point of Ramadan is not just to go hungry and thirsty. We said develop that attachment and to increase in taqwa, the God consciousness, God awareness, fearing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's the whole point. And that's why Allah says, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, so that you may fear Allah azza wa jal, so that you may be conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why does He say, as it was prescribed those before you? Because it was. We look in the King James Version of the Bible, and it's mentioned that Jesus Christ, according to their tradition, fasted for over 40 days when He was tempted by Satan in the desert. So it was prescribed upon Isa and Musa and Noah. It was something that was part of previous religions and previous shariahs. So this idea is, well, I'm going to fast during certain times, I can't eat. Why don't I eat right now? Why don't I drink right now? Because I fear Allah. Because I want to obey Allah. The whole point is to train and discipline us. When you can eat, when you cannot eat, when you can be with your spouse, when you cannot be with your spouse. That's the whole point. So that you're constantly aware and conscious of Allah, not only in and then outside Ramadan as well. Which will be some of the benefits of fasting. If we look at some of the health benefits, I want to read you some things done by some research and some doctors about fasting itself. Research suggests there are major health benefits to fasting. Benefits include reduced risk of cancer. Fasting. This is by non-Muslims. Reduced risk of cancer, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, insulin resistance, immune disorders, and more generally the slowing of the aging process. They're looking for the fountain of youth. You want the magic pill, the magic cream? You want to get rid of those wrinkles? Balding? Fasting reduces aging. The aging process, as it is said by these doctors who are non-Muslims. And the potential to increase maximum lifespan. According to Dr. Mark P. Matson, chief of the Laboratory of Neurosciences at the U.S. National Institute on Aging, fasting every other day, called intermittent fasting, shows beneficial effects in mice as strong as those of caloric restriction diets. And a small study conducted on humans at the University of Illinois indicates the same results. According to U.S. National Academy of Sciences, other health benefits include stress resistance, increased insulin sensitivity, reduced morbidity, and increased lifespan. Long-term studies in humans have not been conducted. Well, they have on us. They haven't. Long-term studies in humans have not been conducted. However, short-term human trials show a benefit in weight loss. It's the new diet. Unfortunately, in Ramadan, a lot of us gain weight. That's not the point, right? You're actually supposed to, eat less and drink less in Ramadan, not eat more and drink more than you would outside of Ramadan. You're actually supposed to sleep less, not sleep more. Sometimes we sleep the whole day, and we eat more and we drink more, and then we follow what the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "Kam min sa'am laysa lahu illa al-'atash wa ju'." How many people that fast, they don't have anything except for hunger and thirst. That's not the point of just hunger and thirst. Again, it's that spiritual elevation and that enhancement of our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The side effect was that participants felt cranky during the 3-week trial. Oh, really? They felt cranky from fasting? Really? Isn't that normal? Feel cranky? So that was the side effect, God forbid, right? According to the study conducted by Dr. Eric Robinson, alternate day fasting may be an alternative to prolonged diet restriction for increasing lifespan. Alternative day fasting called intermittent fasting. Where did that come from? It took them 1,400 years to come to this conclusion. Where did that come from? Huh? So alternate day fasting, fasting every other day. Where does this come from? Huh? Fast of Dawood. The Prophet Muhammad tells us over 1,400 years ago that the greatest fast is the fast of Dawood. What is the fast of Dawood? That you fast every other day, called intermittent fasting. I swear these scientific research studies by doctors, all they do is put terminology on concepts we knew over 1,400 years ago. Our Prophet Muhammad is the greatest doctor, he's the greatest scientist. He's the greatest astrologist, the greatest astronomer. Do you know any doctor who can fix a broken leg just by rubbing on it and making dua? Prophet did. When the Sahaba broke his leg, his bone was sticking out. Prophet wiped over his leg, read on him, and cured him. Do you know any doctor who can do that? Is there any technology that can do that? Any astronomer can go on Isra and Miraj like the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Anybody do that? Can anybody spit in somebody's eye and cure them of glaucoma? Can anybody return somebody's eye back in, make some dua, spit in it, and then it's better than the other eye? Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam did all that? Huh? So he's our greatest doctor, and he as the greatest doctor and our leader of our ummah says to us that the greatest fast is the fast of Dawood, which took him 1,400 years to come to that same conclusion. And look at all the benefits we see before us. Even in medical application, fasting is often indicated prior to surgery or other procedures that require general anesthetics because the presence of food in a person's system can cause complication. Why, when you go to do surgery and you're going to get anesthetics, then they're going to do what? Tell you to fast. Why? Because food can cause complications. During general anesthesia, a medical personnel strongly suggests that their patients fast for several hours overnight before the procedure. So it obviously shows that it's benefit, it's good. Otherwise, they wouldn't have you do that. Fasting is often used as a tool to make a political statement, as well to protest, to bring awareness to a cause. A hunger strike is a method of nonviolent resistance in which participants fast as an act of political protest or to provoke feelings of guilt or to achieve a goal such as policy change. A spiritual fast incorporates personal spiritual beliefs with desire to express personal principles, commonly in the context of social justice. What do we have an example of that? In British India, Mahatma Gandhi, right? Mahatma Gandhi, he undertook several long fasts that he would do in protesting against the government. And then his fast had significant impact on the British Raj and the Indian population generally. So fasting can be used politically, it can be used medically, and it can be used for health benefits, like we said, slowing down the aging process and prolonging life, reducing heart cancer or heart disease, cancer, diabetes, etc., etc., etc. So it's actually not only detoxifying for your body, it's actually beneficial and purifying for your body outwardly and inwardly. People think it's just a spiritual thing. That actually purifies you and actually gives you a healthier body. What are the three types of fasting according to Imam Ghazali? So now we talked about not just eating and drinking during the daytime of Ramadan. He's going to go deeper into the spiritual levels of fasting. Does anybody know them? Huh? Kind of. So, I mean, Imam Ghazali, he breaks down fasting in his book, Ihya al-Din, Reviving the Islamic Sciences. He breaks down fasting into three different types of people. So he says, know that fasting is three different degrees. What's called Sawm al-Umum, fasting of the common folk, which is mostly us. Then he says, Sawm al-Khusus, fasting of the special unique people. And Sawm Khusus al-Khusus, the fasting of the most special of the special people. Okay, so you have three different levels, and he goes and describes. As for fasting of the common folk, who kef and button, it is just refraining your stomach and your privates and so forth from fulfilling its desires, like eating and drinking and intimacy with one's spouse. As for fasting of the unique special people, who kef and it is refraining or abstaining from hearing or seeing or saying or using your head or foot or any other limb from sin. So that's the Sawm al-Khusus, the special people's fast is that they refrain from the haram things. Whether it's their eyes, their mouth, their ears, their tongue, their privates, their stomach, whatever it is, they fast from the haram things. And that is a second level, a greater level than the first. And then he says, and as for those who have this most special people who are unique in fasting, he says, فَصَوْمَ الْقَلْبِ عَنَ الْهَدَمِ, it is a fasting of the heart. So the first one was fasting of just, from food and water that breaks your fast. The second one is fasting from everything haram. The third level is fasting of the heart, which he says is the greatest form of fasting. Sawm al-qalb an al-hadam, that you fast from anything that is lowly, thinking in just a worldly sense only, and also from anything other than Allah entirely. So what is Sawm al-khusus? Al-khusus, fasting from everything other than Allah. Yani the only thing that comes through your heart, the only thing that you care concerned about is Allah. That's a really high level, and that's the ideal we should aspire to try to achieve, is that level. وَيَحْصَلَ الْفِطْر, he says, how do you break that fast? He says, you break that fast, the sawm, by thinking and other than Allah. Like that's your iftar. Now, the iftar, the first one you eat and drink, right? The second one, your iftar is doing haram, even if you don't eat and drink. The third one, thinking about other than Allah is your iftar. Ooh, how many times do we have iftar now? I think we have a lot of qada to do. To make up all those fasts. Azza wa Jal, وَالْيَوْمَ الْآخِرِ, he says, thinking other than Allah and other than the Day of Judgment, will be fikr fi dunya illa dunya. He said, thinking in the worldly sense, except in that which you need for the religion. So it's different, he says, when you are trying to acquire or achieve the items of this world, the material items of dunya, the life of this world, for the akhirah. Your intention is for the akhirah. You're doing it to feed your family, you're doing it to feed yourself, you're doing it for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal, giving away as well. Turadli deen. فَإِنَّ ذَلِكَ نِزَالِ الْآخِرَةِ. He said, truly this is from actually the provisions of the akhirah. When you use the dunya for the akhirah, it's from the provisions of the akhirah. وَلَيْسَ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا حَتَّى قَالَ أَرْبَابُ الْقُلُوبِ. And it's not necessarily from the dunya itself. مَنْ تَحَرَكَتْ هِمَّتُ بِتَصَرُّفِ فِي نَهَارِهِ لِتَدْبِيرِ. And he's just going into, it's somebody who thinks, or they're contemplating about how are they going to break their fast, what are they going to break their fast with, because what's for dinner tonight, he said that this concept, just constantly thinking about what I'm going to do to break my fast and what am I going to break it on. He says, وَيُفْتَرْ عَلَيْهِ كُتِبَتْ عَلَيْهِ خَطِيئَةٌ. This is actually considered a mistake. For somebody at this high level, of this type of fast, to think about food and what they're going to eat and, how delicious it's going to be, this is considered a type of sin or type of mistake for this level of person. فَإِنَّ ذَلِكَ مِنْ قِلَّةِ الرَّسُولِ. He said it's having you have a little trust in Allah and His grace and His merits and His bounty, and you have a little bit of yaqeen, certainty by the provisions that are promised to you by Allah Azza wa Jal. But this is again a very high station, the station of prophets, the saints, and those who are close. It says, أَمَّا صَوْمَ الْخُصُوصِ. And as for the fasting of those who are special, not the special ones, the second level. He says, this is the fasting of the righteous. And it is, again, refraining from all sins. To man be sittat al-umur, and it completes by 6 things. What are these 6 things he's focusing on? To abstain from. 1, al-awwal ghad al-basar, lowering the gaze from looking at haram or looking at with sexual desire at things that are haram. وَكَفَّ الْإِتِّسَاعِ فِي النَّظَرِ إِلَى كُلِّ مَا يُذَمُّ وَيُكْرَهُ. And then also looking at things that are disliked by Allah Azza wa Jal, and anything that occupies the heart or distracts it from the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says in a hadith, "An-nadra sahmun masmoom siham ash-shaytan." He says that the nadra, looking with a sexual glance to something that is impermissible, he says is a poisonous arrow from the arrows of the shaytan. Why does he use the word poisonous? Because even if it goes in you and you remove the arrow, the poison is still there, and it affects the heart, and the person regresses, and they descend, and they get lower, and so forth, and it affects it to where they get even worse. And he says, whoever leaves this glance, fearing Allah Azza wa Jal, then Allah will place in their heart faith, by where they will taste the sweetness of it. Where's the sweetness of faith? How come I don't feel the faith, the sweetness? Well, if one does not look for the sake of Allah and the fear of Allah, then that person will have the sweetness of faith, especially when they're fasting. And it's been narrated, of course, one thing to realize is we fast from the halal, right? We fast from food and water, which is halal for us, during the daytimes of Ramadan. Why would we fast from halal only to commit haram? These things were haram before Ramadan, after Ramadan, right? You know, he's going to go into like also ghiba, backbiting, slandering, and lying and false oaths, and he says also another, you know, those glances with desire. Yeah, these things are haram outside and inside Ramadan, but we've left the halal of eating and drinking for the sake of Allah in Ramadan only to commit haram. This is obviously a contradiction. He says that the Prophet Muhammad has a hadith, there's a narration about it, khamsun, and there's some kalam that strengthens the hadith, is it authentic or not. Khamsun yuftirna as-sa'im. There are 5 things that can break the fast of the person who's fasting. Lying, al-kadhib, al-ghiba, backbiting, and namima, slander, yameen, al-kadhiba, false oaths, and nadhr bi-shahr, looking with sexual desire. These are the 5 things he says can break one's fast. It doesn't mean it breaks one's fast that they have to make up. I mean, if somebody just abstains from food and water and so forth during the daytime, they don't have to make up that fast. But if they commit one of these 5 things, then they lose the reward of fasting. Does that make sense? So you can lose the reward of fasting by committing these 5 things, but it doesn't mean you have to make up the fast. You just don't get reward for it. So we don't want to break our fast with these things without reward.
Is that for the number level 2 people?
It's for everybody. Yeah, he went into level 2 and then he kind of went into like the general. After that, he branched out to the general. He says the second one is preserving the tongue from lying and so forth that we talked about, and indecent talk and being harsh and arguing. This is not a month to argue and debate with our brothers and sisters, right? Nor is any time really. The Prophet Muhammad he says in a hadith, whoever leaves an argument for the sake of Allah and he's right, or we say he's wrong first. He's wrong, then Allah will build for that person a house in the lowest levels of paradise. We're not talking about any house here, rubies, diamonds, gold, gigantic house. Okay, you get anything you want. And if you leave it, it continues the hadith, and whoever leaves an argument, not a discussion or a halal debate, but an argument for the sake of Allah, Allah will build for that person a house in the highest levels of paradise. Why? Because it's harder to leave an argument when you're right. And if you do, you get a house in the highest levels, but if you're wrong when you leave, it's a lot easier, so you get a house in the lower. Either way, you should leave it. Be the better man. What izamu, and then also it's better to be silent than to do these things, and also be occupied with the remembrance of Allah and reciting the Quran, and this is fasting of the tongue that we had mentioned according to Imam Ghazali. So that is, alhamdulillah, Imam Ghazali's different levels of fasting itself, and then obviously we're going to get to more of the fiqh in the second session, but I wanted to cover some of the things in the rest of the ayah. Allah says in the Quran, شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان فمن شهد منكم الشهر فليصم. Allah says the month of Ramadan in which the Quran was revealed is a guidance for all people, it's a clarification and a guidance and a criterion, and whoever attends this month, then they should fast. Does anybody know what day the Quran was revealed? First day of? Yeah. MashaAllah. 17th of Ramadan is the first day that the Quran was revealed, when the Prophet Muhammad received the word iqra, read. Notice the word was read. It wasn't like watch, it wasn't shahid, it wasn't il'ab, it wasn't play. It wasn't just like it wasn't even uktub, right? It was read. Read was the first thing commanded. It shows the importance of the Islamic education and a secular education as well. So when did he receive that? In the cave of Hira? On the 17th of Ramadan. That's when it was revealed to him. That it actually happens to be the Laylatul Qadr, the night of power as well, because that's the night that the Quran was revealed during that year. Because Laylatul Qadr can move from year to year. The dominant opinion is that Laylatul Qadr is usually going to be in the last 10 nights, and it's going to be an odd night. Okay? Which night? There's an opinion that says the 27th, but that's not certain. The actual dominant opinion throughout the scholars is it moves, it transports. But usually the last 10 nights, usually an odd night, but it could technically be any night of Ramadan. And so you want to pretend and believe every night is Ramadan. That's why if you, for example, pray in Jama'ah, Salat al-Isha, then it's as if you prayed half the night according to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And if you prayed Fajr in Jama'ah, as if you prayed the second half. So if you prayed Isha and Fajr in Jama'ah, you've prayed the entire night. You get that same reward. So if that night happens to be Laylatul Qadr, which could be any night, by the way, then you get Laylatul Qadr khayrun min alfi shahr. Allah says Laylatul Qadr is better than 1,000 months, better than 83 years and 4 months. So whatever act of worship you do in the night of power, you get that more. He says khayrun, better than. He didn't say it is worth. He says it's better than. How much better, we don't know. But it's better than 83 years and 4 months of worship. So if you do 2 rakats, it's better than 83 years and 4 months of worship by 2 rakats. So the sky is the limit. And you want to take advantage of the opportunity and do as much as you can. Not to mention that in Ramadan, any nafilah that you do, any supererogatory act of worship that you do is worth a fard. Because the difference between a fard and a nafilah, an obligatory act of worship and supererogatory act of worship, is 70 degrees. Any fard you do is worth 70 fards. So if you just pray dhuhr, for example, that's 1 dhuhr. But in Ramadan, it's worth 70 dhuhrs. 70 fard. And if you did your sunnah after dhuhr, that's worth 1 fard, which is 70 times greater than the nafilah. So you have an opportunity here to make the capital, gain your capital, increase it in the akhirah. That's the whole point. Who wants like a huge, who wants to make as much deposit in this life and reap the rewards of what they have deposited in the next life? I mean, you got halal interest going on it too, so Allah is going to multiply it. And you're gonna take that, you're gonna withdraw that in the akhirah. But the more that you sow now, the more you reap there. So the question of us living in the dunya is not how much have I accumulated, how much do I have, how many things and stuff do I have. The question always is, what have I sent forward to the akhirah? What did I leave behind? What's your legacy? What did you leave behind in this dunya for the akhirah? And what have you sent forward? One of the hadith that always influences me heavily is when the Prophet Muhammad says there are 3 things that go with a person to his or her grave. 2 of them stay and only 1 remains. Their family goes, their wealth goes, and their actions go. Their family, they're going to hear their footsteps walk away. Their wealth is no longer theirs. You can't drive your car to your grave. I'm sorry. You certainly can't live in your house. You can't spend your money, your cash, your check. Nothing is not going to benefit you after. You can't use it. Your money is now divided amongst your inheritors. Your family's gone, and the only thing that remains is your deeds. That's it. And that's why the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they said, therefore the most important thing to us is our deeds. Because that's all it's about. So I constantly contemplate myself personally. All these things we're doing, like, what is it going to benefit me in the next life? What am I going to do with it? How am I going to use it? Doesn't mean don't live. Doesn't mean don't provide. Doesn't mean don't go work. Doesn't mean don't get an education. Of course, do all these things. But what is going to actually stay? مَا عِنْدَكُمْ يَنْفَدُ وَمَا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ بَاقٍ. Allah says in the Quran, that which is with you will eventually disappear, and that which is with Allah will remain forever. So what's for Allah, it remains forever. What's with you will disappear. So I guess that's a personal choice of what you want to stay and what you want to go. Fine. So he continues and he says this verse, and whoever attends it, then they should fast. And it's only 1 month out of the year. We give 11 years to the dunya. Can you give at least 1 year to Allah, 1 month to Allah, and then also have, like they have, New Year's resolution. We need like Ramadan resolution. Like, what's your Ramadan resolution? What do you want to change? What do you want to be better at? They say, well, New Year's, I want to lose this much weight, or I want to get this job, or I want to have this child, or I want to, whatever it is. What's your Ramadan resolution spiritually? And everybody should make one and make that intention, inshallah. Imam Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentions a story about 3 men in the cave. And it's applicable to us today. He says there are 3 men that go into a cave. Right when they enter it, a boulder shuts and slams on the door. And they can't see anything in the cave. But they start to feel this hard substance on the bottom of the cave. And one of them says, well, you guys, I think that this is rubies and diamonds and gold and silver, pearls. I feel this. I think that's what it is, but we can't see it. And the second man says, well, you could be right. And so I'm going to take some of it, and I'm going to leave some of it. Because, it could be just rocks. The third man goes, you guys are just jokers, man. This is just gravel. Stop tripping, man. Just, khalas, leave it. So he doesn't put anything in his pockets. The second man just fills a couple of his pockets. And the first man says, I really think it's gold and silver. He puts it everywhere. his mouth, his pockets, his robe, everywhere he can fit. He puts this stuff. So then the boulder, is removed from the cave. They run out as fast as possible. The clay pops. And every man looks at what he has. And it turns out it was really gold and diamonds and silver and rubies, etc. And the one man's all crying, I can't believe it, I didn't take advantage of the opportunity. He's like, oh, alhamdulillah, I got something, but I wish I would have done more. And the first man's like, alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar, I'm so glad that I took advantage and I got all of it. And that's us in Ramadan today. What type of person are you? Because you're one of the three. And that's the taking advantage that I'm talking about. So, inshallah, I'll make us the first man, or the first person, who takes full advantage and gets all the gifts and blessings of this month. One of the hadith that I want to mention is from Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu. This is a hadith that's in Muslim and Bukhari. It's muttafaq alayh. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كل عمل. This is a hadith Qudsi, meaning, hadith Qudsi. It's Allah saying it on the tongue of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's not the Quran because the meaning is from Allah, but the words are from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Whereas the Quran, the meaning and the words are from Allah. So that's the difference. Hadith Qudsi, Allah says on the tongue of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, كل عمل ابن آدم له إلا الصيام فإنه لي وأنا أجزي به وصيام جنة فإذا كان يوم أحدكم فلا يرفث ولا يسخط فإن ساب أحد أو قاتله فليقول إني صائم والذي نفس محمد بيدي لخلوف فم صائم أطيب عند الله من ريح المسك وللصائم فرحتان يفرحهما إذا أفطر فرح بفطره وإذا لقي ربه فرح بصومه. So he says in this hadith that every action of the son of Adam is for him except for fasting. Every action for the son of Adam, 10 to 700 plus more rewards for that individual except for fasting. Why? Because fasting is for me. Right? Allah says, فَإِنَّهُ لِي, it is for me, and I will reward accordingly. The reason why the scholars say this is because fasting, the reward is unlimited. And your actions that you do, let's say you do sadaqah, or you do prayer, or you do some dhikr, that's great, but that's an action that you get the reward for you, and you get 10 to 700 times reward as mentioned in another hadith. But fasting is only for Allah, and therefore you get unlimited rewards, and Allah rewards you accordingly. Why is that? Because people don't know you're fasting outside the month of Ramadan. Is that right? So, when somebody sees you pray, they know you're praying. When somebody gives you money, sees you give money, they know you're giving money. When somebody sees, you go on Hajj, they know you're going to Hajj. When somebody doesn't know you're outside of Ramadan, people don't know you're fasting, therefore it has to be only for Allah and makes you sincere. There cannot be any ostentation. How can you do it for anybody else when nobody knows you're doing it, except for Allah? Unless, of course, you're rude and tell people you're fasting. Right? You're not supposed to do that, by the way. I remember I was talking to a student in Yemen, and, new students, whatever. And, I was like, because you offer outside of Ramadan, if you're fasting and somebody offers you food or water, you don't say, like, I'm fasting, I can't have it, I'm sorry, I'm trying to fear Allah. Yeah, you don't break your khalas, that's between you and Allah, you don't have to announce it to the world. So, you actually try to, no, thank you, I'm not hungry, thank you. Well, I'm not hungry, but thank you, but, I'm not I can't eat or anything like that. Whatever it is, whatever excuse you have, but you don't want to so, sometimes that occurs where, here you have some of this, or, I can't, I'm fasting for the sake of Allah, for His reward. Otherwise I would eat it, but, I'm trying to sustain, be strong. It's like, okay, give us a football on the whole thing. Okay, we get it, yeah. And this happens. And that's why, you have to be careful of showing off. The man who, he was praying, and he was actually praying in prayer. And he was crying, and he was reciting his Quran, crying and crying. And the people behind him, they said, oh, mashallah, this guy's a pious man who's praying and crying, he must be very righteous. And in his prayer, he's like, and I'm fasting too. It's like, that's not really sincere. Thanks for letting us know, in your prayer, you're telling us you're fasting. You just broke your prayer. That's why it requires ikhlas. Sincerity only for the sake of Allah and for nobody else. Not to have riyat, which is ostentation, doing it for the people or doing it for other than Allah. This is a problem. It's actually considered a sin because we're not doing it for Allah, we're doing it for people, for recognition. And we should be concerned with what Allah wants and Allah desires. The man, he was praying, and he heard somebody come in from the back. He was by himself. And so when he heard the door open, he starts reciting out loud. He was doing it silently. Loud and crying and elongated his prayer. And then, like half hour later, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. He looks back and it's a cat. It's a cat. Now you did all that for a cat. MashaAllah. Ikhlas, right? So yeah, I mean there's instances where if you're encouraging other people to fast or do good or acts of worship, the scholars they say if you're protected from riyat, if you're protected from ostentation, like you're not doing it to show off, but you're doing it so that other people follow your example, then they say it's permissible to do things and say things. So فَأَنَا أَجْزِي and then he says فِسِيَامْ جُنَّةٍ fasting is a protection. And he says, if any one of you fast, then they should not speak evil or use obscene language or shout while fasting, or even outside of fasting. And if anybody tries to curse them or insult them or fight them, what do they say? Inni sa'im, right? You say, I'm fasting. Somebody tries to argue with you while you're fasting or fight you, say inni sa'im, I am fasting. This is the sunnah of what the Prophet told us to. Now, inside Ramadan, the scholars they say, if it's a Muslim inside Ramadan, then you shouldn't actually say that. Well, then you should say that because everybody else is fasting, right? You're reminding them and yourself that you're fasting. But if it's outside of Ramadan, then you should say it internally, right? So because they don't know you're fasting. And then he says, by the one who Muhammad is in his hands, that the saliva of the one who is fasting is sweeter to Allah than the scent of musk. So that saliva, that to us it's like that bad breath, you get at the end, and that saliva that you have is sweeter to Allah than musk because you're doing it for His sake. Now that's to Allah; it's not necessary to creation. So be cautious, right? I'm fasting today. You don't want to be blowing that scent to people's mouth. Okay, mashallah. So just realize that, right? And then also know that using the siwak and so forth is makruh afternoon because that scent is desirable. And it's pleasing to Allah, and so to use siwak would remove that scent. And so after noontime, according to the Shafi method, it's actually makruh, but there's other methods that say siwak is not makruh while fasting. Then he says, for the one who is fasting has two happy moments in his or her life. The one who is fasting. Now the word here is farhatan. Lis-sa'im farhatan. This is why you have to study with a teacher, my friends. You study Arabic, you study deen, you study hadith and sciences and so forth with a teacher, especially when it comes to fiqh rulings. Why? Because there was a student who didn't know Arabic that well, and there was a typo on the word. And so he read Lis-sa'im farhatan. Farha is like a little sheep. Not two happy moments, two sheep. So he thought he has for suhoor a sheep, and for iftar he has a sheep. He said, well, Prophet Muhammad, Sunnah, Prophet Muhammad said, farhatan. Come on, man. There's a typo, it's one dot. It changed the whole meaning of the word by one dot. Instead of farha, with the ha, it was farha, with the kha. One dot, that's all it did. So he says the one who's fasting has two happy moments that they're happy about. One is when they break their fast, that they're happy when they do that. Everybody knows it, right? You see people like half hour before it's time to break fast. Tired, they don't want to talk, maybe cranky, dead. And then you see them after it all, happy, excited, joking, and stuff like that. So this is a happy moment for the believer when they actually get to break their fast. And then the second one is when they meet their Lord, they're happy with the fasting they did for His sake. And obviously we know this is Muslim Bukhari. And obviously we know the hadith that whoever is happy to meet Allah, then Allah is pleased to meet them. And whoever displeases to meet Allah, then Allah displeases to meet them. So inshallah we're in a state that Allah is pleased to meet us and we are pleased to meet Him. And then inshallah we can bring the fast to Him and that will be a happy moment for the believer. And also realizing the way the Prophet Muhammad struggled is important. What did he go through in his life? We have to remember there was a time when the Prophet Muhammad was poor, suffering, didn't even have food. When they were suffering from the embargo in the canyon of Abu Talib, during that 3-year period, the Prophet Muhammad and the Sahaba resorted to eating leaves off trees. Are any of you eating leaves off trees? They actually went through that struggle. When a Bedouin came to the Prophet ﷺ, and he said, Ya Rasulullah, please make dua that Allah provides for us because your dua is answered. and he lifts up his robe, and he had a rock tied to his stomach to suppress the pain. That's how they would suppress the pain of hunger. And the Prophet Muhammad said, told him, be patient. And he lifted up his robe and had 2 rocks. You see, he suffered more than anybody. He went through more struggle than anybody. The Prophet Muhammad sometimes would eat suhoor with dates. And he would break his fast sometimes with water. We have full-blown meals, 5-course meals that we're eating. And we see some of the difficulties. And this is in the Arabian Peninsula. We're talking 120, 130 plus temperature. In the Arabian Peninsula without electricity, no ACs, no fans, no TV, no halas, and nothing. And they're still fasting through that difficult time. Sometimes he would fast 3 days straight, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We can't do that. It's haram actually to fast more than 1 day in a row. You have to break it. But he would fast 3 days straight because he would say, Allah feeds me and gives me water. Allah provided him in a special, unique way. That's a special thing for him, not for us. But he would do that. And he had the ability, the strength to do that. And one time the Prophet Muhammad he came into his house and he asked Sayyidina Aisha radiallahu anha, what do we have for breakfast? Because, the Prophet he would eat breakfast, he wouldn't eat dinner. And when he would eat dinner, he wouldn't eat breakfast. Sometimes we'd eat once a day, sometimes max twice. Didn't have like 5 or 6 times that we had. Snacking on staff. So one time, so we think we have it difficult. Well, look at his life. Look at the life of the Sahaba. Look at how they struggle. That's why they are where they are. And so you see, when he comes into his house and he says to say Aisha, he says, what do we have for breakfast? She says, La shay Rasulullah. We don't have anything. And he says, Inni sa'am. Okay, therefore then I'm fasting. And he fasted that day. When he didn't have anything, he was content with nothing. He was content with a little, and he would fast when he had no food in his house. Now, what would you say if you came home for dinner after long days of work? And you're like, honey, where's the food? La shay. Nothing. You're going to say, oh, I'm just going to be patient, huh? I'm going to be content. Inni sa'im, is that what you're going to say? What? Where's the food? How come you didn't cook anything? I'm hungry. Oh, long day at work. That's what Prophet Muhammad said. He said, Inni sa'im, therefore I'm fasting. Okay, fine. He didn't rebuke her or blame her or yell at her. He said, I'm fasting. That's the greatest, that's the man of all men. Right? It's the man of all men. That's a man's man. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Greatest example. Just some hadith before we close the session on fasting, real quickly. We're just going to cover some hadith and then have a break. We have a hadith that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu he said, إن في الجنة بابا يقال له ريحان يدخل منه الصائمون يوم القيامة لا يدخل منه أحد غيرهم يقال أين الصائمون فيقومون لا يدخل منه أحد غيرهم فإذا دخلوا أغلق فلم يدخل منهم أحد متفق عليه Muslim Bukhari narrated on Sahal bin Sa'ad. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu he said, truly in paradise there's a door, there's a gate. It is called Rayhan. يدخل منه, the people who enter this are those who fasted for the sake of Allah on the Day of Judgment. On the Day of Judgment they will enter this gate. Nobody else shall enter this gate except for them, the one who fasted for the sake of Allah. And it will be said, where are those who fasted? فَيَقُومُونَ, they stand up and they enter it, and no one else. And once they enter it, the gate shuts, and nobody else shall enter after that. So that's you get a special gate with a special entrance into a special part of paradise called Rayhan, for those who fast for the sake of Allah. There's another hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. He says, ما من عبد يصوم يوما في سبيل الله إلا بعد الله بذلك يوم وجهه عن النار 70 خريفا متفق عليه حديث البخاري ومسلم. And narrated from Sa'id al-Khudri radiallahu anhu. Very beautiful hadith. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he said that there is no servant that fasts a day for the sake of Allah except that Allah will distance that slave's face. By the day of that fast, they will distance that slave's face from the fire 70 years. 70 years Allah will distance the face of a person from the hellfire on the Day of Judgment, those who fasted for His sake, because of that day that they fasted. So what about days? What about years, etc.? The next one is عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال من صام رمضان إيمانا واحتسابا غفر له ما تقدم من ذنبه. Again, in Muslim Bukhari, narrated by Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, he says, the Prophet Muhammad said, whoever fasts Ramadan with having faith in Allah and relying and putting their trust in Allah, their sins are completely forgiven for which preceded them. All the previous sins are forgiven. All the previous minor sins, to clarify, are forgiven for them. That's it. So you have basically Ramadan to Ramadan, you have opportunity to have all your minor sins forgiven if you do this fasting, for having faith in Allah and having trust in Him. And then he says, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam قال إذا جاء رمضان فتحت أبواب الجنة وغلقت أبواب النار وصفدت الشياطين متفق عليه. Again in Muslim Bukhari, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, if Ramadan comes, the gates of heaven are opened and the gates of the hellfire are closed. Therefore, if somebody dies in Ramadan, that's why the scholars they go to paradise, because the gates are open and they can't go to hell because the gates are closed. So the gates of heaven are open, the gates of hell are closed, and the shayateen, they are shackled. Alright, so there's interpretation here. What does that mean? The shayateen, they're shackled up, they're imprisoned. This is the Iblis himself, the major shayateen, but not the minor ones. The scholars do say the minor ones are still out there, but the major ones are locked up, according to this hadith which is Muslim Bukhari of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, if the major shayateen, Iblis himself, is locked up in this month, and you do something, and we do something wrong, who are we to blame? Oh, the shaitan made me do it. Oh, he's locked up. We couldn't make you do it. Then who would it have to be? Yourself. Ramadan forces you to reflect and contemplate on your own self. It forces you to face yourself in the mirror. Because anything you think wrong, or do wrong, or see wrong, or be wrong, is from you. That's you. You can't say, well, that's Waswasa, it's the evil whispers of the shaitan. He's locked up. So you kind of see your real self. And then the hadith, he says, قَالَ سُومُوا لِرُؤْيَتِهِ. This is a hadith about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, fast when you see the hilal, the crescent, and break your fast when you see the crescent. And if it is cloudy, then he says, complete the 30 days of Sha'ban. This is in Muslim Bukhari as well. The last two hadith, عن ابن عباس رضي الله عنهما قال كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أجود الناس وكان أجود ما يكون في رمضان حين يلقاه جبريل وكان جبريل يلقاه في كل ليلة من رمضان فيدارس القرآن فلرسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم حين يلقاه جبريل أجود بخير من ريح مرسلة. Abbas, he narrates in the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that the Prophet was the most generous of all people. And he was the most generous of all people, especially in Ramadan, especially when Jibreel would meet him and teach him the Quran. Every night he would come, Jibreel, and he would teach him the Quran and he would recite it with him. And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, was more generous than a blowing wind. You know, blowing wind just keeps coming. A blowing wind keeps coming and coming, constantly bringing the wind. He was doing that with like gifts and charity. He was very generous, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and especially in Ramadan. Even he would have valleys of livestock from one mountain to the other in Medina, and it would be fields, and he would give that all away. And he would take nothing sometimes. There's a story of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that one time he was distributing the spoils of war from Bahrain. We're talking, gold, silver, livestock, etc. And he was doing that in Ramadan. And he actually forgot, he distributed everything to the poor and needy and so forth. He forgot to actually keep any of it for himself, his own portion. He didn't take for himself. And when it came time to break fast, because he was fasting, Aisha says to him, she says, what did you keep for yourself from the spoils of war so that we could break fast? And he said, oh, I forgot. He just coincidentally happened to forget to keep anything from himself, his own portion, to break fast during Ramadan. Yet he gave it for everybody else. So that's kind of the sacrifice and the character of Rasulullah and his generosity. When I say livestock to us, that might be like, oh, okay, so camels and sheep and stuff like that. Like, what does that mean to us? That was their livelihood. That was their transportation. That was their milk. That was their food. That was their. They would breed from those animals. More sheep and goats and cows. That would be like me saying, okay, the entire parking lot of Costco, of BMWs and Mercedes-Benz, you just give it away. That's what it would be today, to contextualize what that was then. So the last hadith, كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, this is on Aisha, she narrates, كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا دخل عشر أحيا الليل وأقضى أهله وشد المئزر. Aisha, she says, when the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when the last 10 days entered, when the last 10 days entered of Ramadan, he would bring the night to life. He would bring the night to life, and he would wake up his family, and he would get real serious. Shadd al-Mizar is what the Arabs would say. They would tie their izar. You know the izar when you go on Hajj? They would tie that real tight. It means they got real serious. Like, okay, I said we're going to get serious here now. You roll up your sleeves, and maybe you can say the West. But that's what he would do in the last 10 nights, and he would give more effort in Ramadan than he would any other month. in pleasing and worshiping Allah. And in the last 10 days, he would give more effort than the entire month of Ramadan. So that's kind of the way of the Prophet ﷺ. And so this is kind of the introduction of the merits and the merits and the bounty and the blessing of Ramadan and fasting in that month. And I wanted to go over some ayats and hadith, and we talked about some of the physical benefits and some of the spiritual benefits of Imam Ghazali as well. So we want to talk about that, and then inshallah we'll take a break here for about 10 or 15 minutes, 10 minutes or so, and we'll come back, stretch, move your legs. Again, I would offer you food and drink and some refreshments, but it's Ramadan, we can't do that. So, but then come back, inshallah, we'll discuss the fiqh. The fiqh is obviously going to be more information and more kind of like rulings, what are the conditions, what is halal, what is haram, what is makruh, what is sunnah, about fasting itself. So we know that we're doing it right. You don't want to just fast without doing it right. And making sure it's sound, making sure it's valid, and making sure you're not doing something that's breaking your fast. And believe you me, we have multiple cases of people, they think they're doing something right. And my personal experience. And they learn the rulings from the scholars in the fiqh, and they actually found out, oh, I guess I wasn't doing it right. Or they thought something was wrong, but it really was okay. I find that a lot. We just had a youth camp, and many of the youth, we taught them how to pray and do wudu. That was an important deen session we had. It might have been the most important session in the whole camp itself, and the point of the whole camp, teach them how to do the wudu and pray. And we found that many of them didn't know how, or they were doing it wrong. And so that's why it's critical to learn to have education to make sure it's sound and valid, and then therefore all your actions are valid, and therefore you're rewarded for it, and it's accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So inshallah we'll take a break. Jazakallah khair, barakallahu feekum, and we'll come back for our fifth class in the second session. Take a 10-minute break, we'll come back. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Muhammadin wa alihi wa sallam, subhanaka rabbi, subhanaka rabbi, rabbil izzati amma yasifun, wa salamun ala alhamdulillah rabbil alamin. Jazakallah khair.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, wa salatu wa salam ala Sayyidina Muhammadin, ashraf anbiya wa Sayyidina mursaleen, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi sallam ajma'in. Alhamdulillah, continuing our second session of the Mihraab Ramadan workshop in the fiqh of Ramadan, which is very important and essential, again, to make sure that we're performing our fasting correctly. We're not breaking our fast. It's sound, it's valid, and therefore we get reward for doing so, inshallah, in the akhirah. And it's important to realize that in this session, it's going to be a lot of information and a lot of rulings. This is a fiqh portion, so it's not going to be as much inspirational and motivational and stories and stuff like that, as much as it's going to be how to fast and how to make that valid. So I'm going to skip actually the whole moon fighting thing, because we already are in Ramadan, and now it's more about application and practicality. So we're going to actually cover that more so than how do you know when Ramadan is entered, etc. So we're going to go past that. The section, the conditions for the validity of fasting are four conditions to make your fasting valid. One is Islam. So therefore, somebody who is non-Muslim, it is not valid for them to fast. Can they fast? Sure. They have like the fast-a-thon at UW where non-Muslims and Muslims fast. It's great dawah, it's a great program, it's great for bringing people together, but the reality is non-Muslims, their fast is not valid because one, they don't have an intention to fast, and in order to have intention, you have to first be Muslim. So therefore, it's invalid itself. The second one is sanity. You have to be sane. If somebody is insane or has lost their intellect, is completely removed, like an insane person, then they are not obliged to fast, and therefore it's also not valid. 3 is purity from menstruation and postnatal bleeding. If a woman has menstruation or postnatal bleeding, it is not it's not allowed, it's not permissible for her to fast. But somebody should realize that even when they're not fasting, for the sake of Allah and obeying Him, they're getting reward. Right? It's not like women, they don't fast and they don't pray when they're on their menstruation or postnatal bleeding and they don't get reward for doing so, or that they're somehow deficient in Ramadan or fasting or something like that. No. Actually quite the opposite. If they obey their Lord and what He wants and doing what He says, then they actually get reward as if they were fasting and as if they were praying, because that's what Allah orders them to do, is to abstain from fast and from prayer whilst doing so. Now, a woman who goes through menses or postnatal bleeding that does not pray or fast, she does not make up her prayers, but she has to make up her fasts. Okay? And that's generally done by the next Ramadan. Knowledge of its appropriate time. People have to know, as a condition of the validity of fasting, when Ramadan enters, when Ramadan leaves, when the dawn enters, when the sunset is. You have to know the appropriate time for the Sawm to be valid. And we'll get to more details about that.
So I'm going to actually go through some of the footnotes as well. A non-Muslim will be asked to fast, will not be asked to fast, nor would it be valid if he did. A woman whose period ends during a day of Ramadan is mustahab to fast the rest of the day, and is wajib to make up the fast and the fast days prior to when it was missed during her period and postnatal bleeding. So basically, in some of the footnotes, if a woman has no longer has menstruation, it ends, and it's during the daytime of Ramadan, what does she do? It is mustahab, it is recommended for her to fast the rest of the day, but she doesn't have to. Okay? And it is wajib to make up that fast day. It doesn't like she did half. It's wajib, obligatory, to make up that fast day and all the prior days that she missed while she was fasting or through postnatal bleeding. And then the next section is the conditions for fasting becoming wajib are 5. So what are the conditions that make fasting obligatory? Are 5. Islam, we said, mukallaf, that they have reached the age of legal responsibility, which is at puberty itself, and that they are sane. So a child who has not reached the age of puberty, which is different for all children. We did a puberty workshop here at ICOR last year, and there were children who reached the age of puberty at 9. We saw a young man who reached the age of puberty at 9, and there was somebody who was 15 who had not. But then 15, we know that once you reach 15, you automatically do. Whether you have wet dream or not, you still automatically reach the age of puberty. That is according to the lunar calendar. The next condition is the ability to fast. So outside of that would be somebody who's too old and too weak to fast, for example. And then the next one, the next condition is health, that they have good health. If they're sick, and so forth, we're going to get to more details, then they're not obliged to fast. And then the next one is muqim, they are a resident, they are not a traveler. So an excuse not to fast is if you're traveling. What are the details of that? We'll get into inshallah. So in the details of the footnotes, a child of 7 is ordered to fast, and at 10 is spanked for not fasting. So there's a hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He says, order your children to pray at 7 and spank them at 10 if they do not. That is, if there's benefit in doing so. And then by puberty it becomes obligatory for them to do so. This is not just prayer. This is all the obligations, such as fasting, and such as whatever obligations that they have, avoiding haram and so forth. When at the age of 7 you order them to do so, although they don't have to. At the age of 10, then you to spank them if they don't pray or if they don't fast. Again, if there's benefit, is a condition. If there's no benefit, then don't do that. Then don't spank them, because you can cause it to be worse. All right, some kids might actually spank you back at that age. It's something crazy, huh? It's the society we live in nowadays. So, and then at the age of puberty is when it becomes obligatory. Before puberty, it is not obligatory. The scholars do mention that the parents, this is important, of starting young with your children. I'm talking 7 years old, not 17. So when I get the message of my child is not fasting and not praying, I can't believe, you got to help them and fix them. How old are they? 17. 17. Did you tell them to pray or fast before? No. But now it doesn't start at 17. It starts at 7 years. It actually starts at 7 months. It actually starts even before they're born. So we know, though, that the parents get the reward of the good deeds the child does before the age of puberty. Especially if they taught them those actions and deeds and how to do them, they get the reward. As well as the child gets the reward, but the child will not get any sin before the age of puberty for committing haram. And the parents will not get a sin before the age of puberty unless they taught them to do that. And after the age of puberty, the child is solely responsible for him or herself. Their sins are their sins, their good actions are their good actions, and some scholars say that the parents, if they taught them to do the good, they still continue to get the good deeds and rewards. Because of the hadith, "Man dalla ala khair kafa'ilihi," the one who indicates the good is like the one who does it, as the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said. So to discipline a child, okay, again,
obviously it's not beating your child, right? It's just spanking, or not causing any blood or harm or broken bones or anything like that. It's just a kind of discipline there. One is capable of bearing this fast. Someone who fasting exhausts because of advanced years or having an illness from which he is unlikely or she is unlikely to recover is not required to fast. Somebody's too old, somebody has a sickness, even if they're young, but they're not likely to recover from, maybe a type of cancer or chronic illness, they are excused from fasting. But they still have to pay a mud every day that they do not fast. A mud is 509 grams of the dominant food of that society that you live in, or that community that you live in. Right?
that's what you have to pay every day. And in the Hanafi method, you can pay the value of it. In the Shafi'i method, you have to actually pay the food itself as an expiation to the poor and needy Muslims in the community to make up for every day that they did not fast. The illness that permits not fasting being that which fasting would worsen. Some people say, so what do you mean by sickness? When I get sick, I don't have to fast. What does that mean, headache? Does that mean a common cold? Not necessarily. What is meant by sickness is a kind of severe sickness. Here are the conditions. The illness that permits not fasting. Now, you can break your fast. That which fasting would worsen it. If you fast, you would worsen the sickness. 1. Delay recovery from the sickness or cause one considerable harm by fasting. The same dispensation applying to someone who needs to take medicine during the day that breaks the fast and that he cannot delay until night. So if somebody has medication that they have to take, it's going to increase the sickness, it's going to delay the sickness, it's going to harm them unless they take this, and they're excused to break their fast and take the medication. Or they can also, if they need to, break their fast and drink and eat water, or drink water and eat food. It is permissible not to fast when traveling, even when the intention to fast has been made the night before, with conditions. It's not like absolute, you just travel and say you don't fast. The conditions are basically 2. Provided that the journey is at least 50 miles in one direction. So if you're intending to travel 50 miles or more, there's a difference of opinion 48 to 51, but let's round up, say 50 miles. If you're intending to travel 50 miles or more, once you cross or exceed the city limits of the city that you're in or live in, then you can break your fast. You don't have to fast. But it has to be 50 miles or more in one way. And that one leaves before dawn. That's the second condition, especially in the Shafi'i method, that they're pretty strict on. One has to leave before dawn. So even if you make your intention the night before, and if you leave before dawn, and you're intending to travel more than 50 miles, as soon as you cross the city limits, you can break your fast. But if you leave after dawn, after Fajr comes in, then you have to fast that day. But now that you fasted that day, you don't have to fast the next day if you're still traveling, or the next day if you're still traveling, or the next day if you're still traveling. You see what I mean? So this is some of the dispensations of traveling that one has. If one leaves after dawn, one is entitled to omit the fast. One is not entitled to omit the fast. It is preferable for travelers not to fast if fasting would harm them, though if not, then fasting is better. So the general principle, if somebody's traveling, it's better for them to fast if it's not going to harm them. But if it is going to harm them, then it's better for them to break the fast. Now, obviously, they used to ride on camelback in hot deserts or in the peninsula for days. We travel on planes with air conditioning. Okay, so it's a lot faster, it's a lot quicker. Yes, you can still take it. The rule's a rule. Miles are miles. But since traveling is a lot easier, if you find it easy for you to fast and it's not going to harm you, then it's better to fast. And if you don't, then it's better to break your fast. Section, the intervals of fasting of Ramadan are 3. What are the intervals of fasting? 1, to make an intention at night for each day of the fard fast. Okay? So we're going to go over that because this is really important. This is what a lot of people forget. And it's problematic to forget this, especially the Shafi'i method. To make an intention a night for each day before the fard fast. Okay. You have different opinions here. You have the Maliki method, which says if you make the intention the first night of Ramadan to fast the entire night of Ramadan, then you don't have to make it after that. That's the Maliki method, although it's recommended to you. The Hanafi method says you have to make the fast every single night before dawn, before Fajr comes in. You have to make the intention every night. The Hanafi method says you have to make the intention every night before the zawal, before the zenith of the sun. You have until zenith of the sun, before Dhuhr comes in, to make your intention. The Shafi'i method is the strictest, and they say you have until dawn, until Fajr comes in to make your intention for the following day. What's your intention? So this part is important. Your intention in Arabic is Nawaitu fard as-sawm an shahri Ramadana ghadan billahi ta'ala is the minimum. I intend the obligatory fast of Ramadan tomorrow for the sake of Allah. Okay? If you want the bare minimum, I intend the obligatory fast of Ramadan tomorrow. That's the bare minimum. You have to have that intention in your heart, and it's sunnah to say in your tongue. In the Shafi'i method, obligatory in your heart and sunnah, recommended to say in your tongue. نويت فرض صومي عن شهر رمضان غدا لله تعالى. And there's people who add هذه سنة لله تعالى, this year of Ramadan. There's different additions, but that intention has to be there. If one misses the intention by dawn, they forget, because this happens. That's why you sometimes put notes and cards in your fridge or on your door, whatever it may be, to remind yourself of intention. Because if you forget it, then you still have to fast that day, and you have to make it up. Now, do you have something to fall back? Sure. You have the Hanafi who says that you have until Dhuhr comes in. Or you have the Maliki who says if you made that intention the first night, it goes for the entire month. So you do have some ways to fall back on something, in case you do forget it or miss it. But that intention is an integral of fasting itself. When does the intention start? So we told you the end. When does it start? Huh? What? After Maghrib. As soon as Maghrib comes in, you can make the intention. I actually make my intention after Maghrib Salat every night. Just so I don't forget. And then I try to make it again for Suhoor, just in case I forgot to make it for Maghrib. That's it, makes your mind kind of weird. So, to refrain, the second integral to refraining from intentionally doing things which break the fast for one who is conscious of his fast and is not ignorant. So, to refrain from things that will break your fast. Not somebody who's ignorant, meaning they grew up in some far out desert or jungle away from the scholars and don't know anything about Islam, or brand new converts. This might be some of the exceptions. But somebody who deliberately refraining from intentionally doing things that break your fast, such as food and water and intimacy with one's spouse, etc. And then the third integral is the fasting person himself. That's required to have a valid fast person. And I just want to get into a little bit of what's meant here. And this part is really important about what breaks your fast and how you break it. Anything, anything that can be seen with the naked eye, any substance, okay? Whether it's liquid or physical substance, tangible, if that is consumed, what do I mean by consumed? If you enter externally and internally into your mouth and it goes past the ha, you know when you say ha, alhamdulillah, the ha, when you say that part of the throat is about here. Ha, you can feel that. If it goes down past the ha, then it breaks your fast. Okay? If it's from outward in. This is not including saliva. Saliva does not break your fast. You can drink all the saliva in your mouth that you want. As soon as the saliva becomes external and then goes back internal and goes past the ha, it breaks your fast. What do I mean by that? The scholars, they give an example. You have a string. You're wetting the string. Now, it's in your mouth, but as soon as you do this, now it's outside your mouth, it's external. And then you bring the string back and you swallow that. If there's liquid on that string, or a drop of saliva, and if you swallow past the ha, it breaks your fast. Okay? What is the big problem that I have people have? Licking the lips. If you lick your lips all the way around, when we get back to the original part, and you swallow that past the ha, that will break your fast. So if it becomes external, and then internal again, that can be a problem. Using the siwak, for example, or you can say toothbrush. Using a toothbrush or siwak, to put it in your mouth and use it is not a problem. When you put it in your mouth, you take it out, and then you put it back in, and there's substance on it that goes past the ha, that will break your fast. Okay, so these are some of the things that can do that. So anything that can be seen, whether it's a sesame seed or a drop of water, that would do that, that would go past the ha, would break your fast. Now, in terms of sinuses or snot, that's in the head. You have a difference of opinion. You have the Maliki scholars who will say what? Anything in the head does not break your fast. So whether it's snot or sinuses that you swallow, it does not break your fast. You have the Shafi method which says it does. So if it comes from above, here, and it's not or anything like that, and it goes past the ha, it breaks your fast. But the saliva in the mouth does not, no matter how much you swallow. Now the big issue that occurs, you burp or you belch, something comes up, or you vomit. Okay, now you have a new set of rulings here. If something comes from the stomach or the chest and it comes up, whether it's snot or phlegm or wherever you ate, whatever it may be, if it comes up past the ha, you know when you say ha, khalid, ha, if it goes past the ha, it becomes foreign. Even if it's in your mouth. So if it goes past the kha, it becomes foreign, even if it's in your mouth, and if you re-swallow it past the hat, it breaks your fast. Again, this is if it's done intentionally, deliberately. If you accidentally swallow something, then it doesn't break your fast, given that you could have removed it. I'll give you an example. Something like belch or burp or whatever, something comes up from underneath. It goes past the kha, it's in my mouth. If I have the opportunity to spit it out, I have to spit it out. If I don't have the opportunity and I accidentally swallow it again, it doesn't break my fast. But if I have the opportunity to spit it out and I didn't, and I accidentally swallowed it, it breaks my fast. Because you had the opportunity to do so. Okay? So that's covering the nose, the saliva, the stomach, what comes up. Why am I saying this? It happens. It happens a lot. I get questions about it all the time. Okay? Cover things real quickly like what? Brushing your teeth in the daytime or Ramadan. What's the rule? This is a big question. Brushing your teeth in the daytime of Ramadan, because the toothpaste usually has sugar or some kind of substance, to swallow it would break your fast. If it's in the daytime of Ramadan, that's why it's highly encouraged to brush your teeth at night. But the technical ruling of brushing your teeth during the daytime of Ramadan, by where you do not swallow any of the toothpaste, is considered makruh because you're tasting something. Remember we said tasting is makruh, it's disliked, but it's not haram. And it doesn't break your fast. Now, if you brush your teeth, which is makruh, in the daytime of Ramadan, and you can't swallow, that is again, if you spit everything out, you brush your teeth, wash your mouth out well. And make sure none of the water left in your mouth is still in there. Even when you do wudu, spit out all the water. Make sure nothing is left. Okay? I do about 3 times, no more. I don't want to get crazy. 3 times, no more. And then the toothpaste that you use, it's makruh. If you were to swallow it accidentally, it breaks your fast. Why? Because it's makruh. You shouldn't be doing it anyway. That happens. Brush your teeth. Oops. Broke your fast. What does that mean? You gotta fast the rest of the day and you gotta make it up later. No sin because you didn't need to do that, but it breaks your fast. Smoking or inhaling anything that's nicotine or tobacco or what they call it, the shisha, these things will break your fast. Secondhand smoke does not break your fast. In the Maliki method, it does. So that's why Maliki's got to be cautious. Maliki method, bukhur, secondhand smoke that they inhale would break your fast. In the Shafi and Hanafi, it does not break your fast to inhale a secondhand smoke or bukhur or something like that. Now, if you are the one smoking or blowing then that would break your fast because you're taking more than just smoke. You're taking the nicotine, tobacco, etc. that comes with it. In the daytime Ramadan. The patch that people use in the daytime instead of smoking to get a nicotine fix does not break your fast. Okay, anything that penetrates through the pores of your skin does not break your fast. Lotion or oils or the patch does not. Okay? Injections. This is a question I get all the time. Injections during the daytime of Ramadan, if it is inside your vein or your artery that goes straight into your bloodstream, that would break your fast. But if it is in a muscle or in fat, it would not. Make sense? Asthma? What's the ruling on asthma? People have asthma, right? The daytime Ramadan. What is the ruling on that? You have a difference of opinion. They're very strong. Some scholars say, well, since they use a cartridge and they remove it and put another one, there has to be some substance. It's not just air. There has to be some kind of medication or substance that's going inside them. Therefore, it would break their fast. Of course, if it's necessary for them, then they should break their fast and do it. And maybe if it's a chronic illness, they would have to pay a mud, which is about $10, $10 a day for every day they broke their fast, or give the food in the chapter like that. Or make up the days if it's a better season. If winter they have less asthma, then they can maybe make it up then, right? And they can do so for a necessary cause like their health. But if they don't need to, it's better to wait till nighttime. And if they do use it, some scholars will say it does break the fast because it is a substance, and other scholars say no, it's not. It's not a substance, it's just air, they'll say. Of course there's medication, but it's just mostly air blowing in, and it's not going to break the fast because also it's a necessity for that individual to use. So you have a difference of opinion on asthma. And people can choose which one to take, they're both valid. The cavity itself in breaking your fast is considered the head and the stomach and chest area. Right? So any opening into the cavity where there's penetration through that opening would break the fast. It's not just your mouth. Okay? So be careful, like in showers, because water penetrating the ears would break the fast. The scholars say the eyes are not an opening. So you can use contact solution, eye drops, no problem. But careful of ear drops, or when the shower hits your ear directly, if water goes inside and penetrates, it considers a cavity and would break your fast through the ear itself, or through the nose and past the hat, or the mouth, of course, into the hat. These are some of the openings. The scholars say when you take a shower in the daytime, what do you do? What do you do for your ears? Does anybody know? Huh? What do you do for the daytime? Stuff the cotton? Yes, good guess. There's a way to do it. Have you ever figured it out? How do you wash your ears in Ramadan? Especially if you have to do a fart whistle. Yeah? You can take a shower. It's not a problem taking a shower. Swimming might be difficult because water might definitely enter your ears. But taking a shower is not an issue. So what they say is you cup your hand with water and do this. Yeah. So you cup your hand and do this. Because the water comes back out. You can do this too, but what you don't do is under the shower head. Alright? The water just goes right through the ears. This includes all cavities. So front and back private parts, if anything penetrates through that would break the fast. So be careful like it's in jet. People make that mistake. When you clean yourself and you use the bathroom, be cautious of water and so forth, because if there's penetration, it could break the fast. So that's generally the cavities of the person who's fasting, and usually most of the questions are going to be centered around those things in terms of what would break the fast. And then he goes into the kafara. The kafara is an expiation. Major kafara, expiation, and specified punishments are compulsory together with making up the fast for he who breaks his fast or she who breaks his fast in Ramadan a complete day by having complete intercourse in which he becomes a sinner in his fast. This is obviously a major kafara, major expiation. If somebody has intimacy with their spouse, then that would, one, break the fast, two, be a major sin. In the daytime of Ramadan, right? Be a major sin, and then three, they would have to pay expiation. What is expiation? Well, free a believing sound slave, which doesn't exist anymore. You see, the Sharia was always designed to free slaves. That was the whole point, until there was no more slavery. But, alhamdulillah, since it abolished, since it has been, all the slaves have been freed through that process and others, after that, one has to fast for 2 consecutive months, 60 days consecutively. Like, you can't break it. If you break it, you have to start all over again from day one. Okay? Even if you're sick, you have to start all over. So 60 days straight, and if you can't do that, it's feeding 60 people. Feeding or clothing 60 people. Okay? This is the expiation for doing so with the major sin of doing so. And this is only for men, by the way. Okay? This is only for men who have to actually pay the kafara. The women do not. If they consensually do so, then they get a major sin as well, and they have to make up the day of breaking their fast. But since they broke their fast in the process, they are not considered to have to actually doing the act immediately, as a man would, and then therefore he would have to fast the 2 months consecutively, and not the woman, with making up the day he broke with the major sin. Talk about men's rights, right? Yeah, where's men's rights in this one? Huh? Yeah. Where's the parents? Where's the equality? But see, that's the whole point. It's about obeying the law, not obeying each other. Not a man obeying a woman or a woman obeying a man. It's not obeying the law. The law is set as the rules. It's a standard. It's his standard that we follow. If it's for or against us. I like silk, but hey, I can't wear it. Allah said, Allah. Women can wear it, sure, no problem. So, he says, there are 6 situations in which it is compulsory for one to abstain from things which break the fast and also necessitate the making up of that fast later. Breaking his or her fast with a wrong act from the side in the month of Ramadan. Okay, so what are we talking about? 6 situations where one has to abstain from the things which break the fast and also make it up. In other words, they have to continue fasting and also make it up later. What are they? 6 conditions, 6 situations. If somebody deliberately breaks their fast in the daytime of Ramadan, in the month of Ramadan, then 1, they sin for doing so, and 2, they have to fast the rest of the day, and they have to make up that day later. Now, if somebody deliberately breaks their fast in the daytime of Ramadan, there's a difference of opinion about what the punishment is. Everybody says, of course, that's a sin. And everybody says you have to make up that day. But the Hanafis are strict. They say you have to make up 2 consecutive months for that day that you deliberately broke your fast as a punishment, as a discipline. Shafi say no. You just get the sin and you have to make up the day. That's it. So it's a little bit more lenient. Imagine somebody who deliberately not fast for 10 years. That would be a lot of days to make up. And this starts when? Puberty. It starts at puberty. It doesn't start like, well, I started practicing last year. It starts at puberty. You have to make up all those fasts from puberty till today that you haven't passed. So again, the Shafi position may make it easier and facilitate kind of the makeup process. That's deliberately. If you accidentally break your fast, you accidentally eat or drink, which happens, that is considered sadaqah from Allah. It is a charity from Allah and a gift from Him. And you have to continue fasting the rest of the day once you remember, but you don't have to make up that day. Okay? Regardless of how much you eat or drink. There was a scholar, he was sitting with another scholar, and he was telling me the story that he went over to his house because he invited him over, and he prepared lunch for him in the daytime Ramadan. Oh, we forgot. Daytime Ramadan. And he prepared lunch for him, and the guy was just sitting there and he was eating all. He said, "No, this is tafadhal, eat, yeah, eat." He's like, "No, I'm okay." He's like, "What's wrong with you?" He got offended, because Arabs, they get offended when you don't eat at their house. So he got all offended, like, "Oh, no, because you're not supposed to say what." The ruling is when somebody is breaking their fast accidentally, there's 2 ways of dealing with it. One, if they know that that's not permissible, then it's better to leave them alone and not say anything. Guys eating a Snickers bar right in front of you or ice cream, and you know it's from Allah and you know he's fasting, he knows he's not supposed to do it. Leave him alone. It's sadaqah from Allah. Khalas, he forgot. Let him have his delight. Okay? But if he doesn't know, then it's obligatory for you to tell him. So maybe a new convert, you see him, he doesn't know that you can't eat food. He thought it was just water or something. Then you have to say, hey, you're not supposed to eat that in Ramadan, it's daytime, etc. You can't eat food. So if they know, you don't tell them. If they don't know, then you do tell them. Right? But either way, it's sadaqah from Allah if they forget. So he's just sitting there, and the guy eats like a full course lunch, with them. He's all upset that he won't eat with them, and he doesn't want to say anything because he knows that it's sadaqah from Allah. He knows it's a scholar, it's a mufti. He knows that he's not supposed to do that. He just forgot. So he just left him, watched him eat an entire lunch, a huge lunch, rice and meat and all this stuff. And, he started moving rice around just to make him feel better, but he didn't eat any of it. And then he gets tea, and then brings some dessert. And he's drinking all this water in front of us. And yeah, but it's hot, he's sweating, right? And then he says, Akhi, I'm still a little hungry. Let's go. He says, Akhi, you're fasting, for God's sake, it's Ramadan. He couldn't take it anymore. It was like, God, enough is enough. Yeah, you're fasting. Come on, you're mufti. What's up? Like he couldn't take it. He would go for another meal. What? So the next one is upon who omits the attention at the night to fard fast. So if you forget your attention the night before, you still have to fast that day, but you have to make it up. Okay? Upon one who has suhoor, a meal before dawn, thinking that the night still remains, but it was not so. Somebody who eats suhoor, they think there's still time in the night, but there's not. Maybe they found out afterwards, oh wow, I actually ate an hour after Fajr comes in. Then that person has to continue fasting the rest of the day, but they don't have to. They have to continue fasting the rest of the day, and they have to make that day out. The next one is upon whom breaks the fast, thinking that the sun has set, but it has not. Somebody, the reverse. Somebody is eating dinner thinking the sun has set, but it has not set yet. And they figure that they realize that later, then they have to continue fasting if they realize it, and then also make up that day. The legal occasion of the offense is the particular day of fasting, so that if they were committed on 2 separate days, 2 separate expiations would be necessary. He's just saying that if somebody commits the expiation of having the relationship in the daytime, if it's just one day, then it's expiation for one day, and if it's 2 days, it's 2 days, but if it's like twice in one day, then it just counts as one day. The expiation meaning the 60 days of fasting, etc., for that one day. Though if it were committed twice a day, then there would only be one expiation. The expiation consists of freeing a non-Muslim slave. If not possible, then fast the days of 2 consecutive months. If this is not possible, then expiation is to feed 64 persons, each one 500 grams of food to each poor person of the dominant food of that community, like rice or wheat, whatever it may be, corn, If one is unable to do this, then the expiation remains as an unperformed obligation upon that person concerned. So somebody says, well, I can't feed 60 people, I'm poor, I can't fast 60 days a week. Somebody says, like, also, they can't free a Islam-believing slave for the sake of the law. What do? That's like a debt on the neck that they have to eventually pay off, or get a loan to pay off, and then pay off the loan. The woman with whom intercourse is performed is not obliged to expiate it, like we said. Wajib to fast the remainder of the day, like a person who is intoxicated from the night until morning of Ramadan, his body and front are abstain from things. So, somebody who's intoxicated throughout the entire day of Ramadan, or somebody who's unconscious for the entire day of Ramadan, they'd have to make up that day. They'd have to make up that entire day. But technically speaking, if somebody's unconscious for part of the day, then they would have to obviously fast, and they wouldn't have to make it up. So somebody's unconscious or somebody sleeps the entire day of Ramadan. Do they have to make up that fast? Not technically. If they did their intention and they didn't eat or drink or break their fast, whether they're unconscious or whether they're sleeping, they don't necessarily have to make up that fast. Okay? Now, somebody who's intoxicated, obviously there's a sin for intoxication, but even if they are intoxicated and they go throughout the entire day, if they sober up and then fast the entire day, they wouldn't have to necessarily make that up. Upon who has reckoned the 30th Sha'ban to be the first of Ramadan, so if somebody thinks the 30th of Sha'ban is the first day of Ramadan, then this is called Yom HaShek. It's actually not permissible to fast on the day of Yom HaShek. And then if somebody does that, then it's not going to be something that they have to make up because it's not considered Ramadan. Upon whom was excessive in gargling and putting water in the nostrils to the extent that the water goes down the throat. Again, when doing wudu, it's very important you do wudu correctly. If somebody does wudu with their mouth or the nose in Ramadan, you're not supposed to exaggerate. Outside of Ramadan, it's sunnah, recommended to exaggerate. You know, like that, when you do wudu 3 times in the mouth, 3 times in the nose. Inside Ramadan, it's makruh to exaggerate because you may swallow it, you may inhale it. And if you do, right, if you exaggerate in Ramadan, which is already makruh, and you accidentally swallow water, it breaks your fast. You have to continue fasting and make up that day. Same with your nose. If you do more than 3 times, because 3 is the max, it's the sunnah. If you do 3 or more than 3 times, then that also, and you accidentally swallow, that breaks your fast too, and you got to make up the day and continue fasting. Section fasting is nullified with apostasy. If somebody apostates from Islam, that would break their fast instantly. Menstruation, if a woman sometimes she gets 5 minutes before Maghrib and her menstruation comes, nullifies the fast. Yeah, nullifies the fast, unfortunately. She gets reward for what she did up to that point, but it nullifies that day, and she's got to make that day up. Postnatal bleeding as well, childbirth. Even if there's no bleeding whatsoever, childbirth breaks the fast. Insanity, and even for a moment. If somebody goes insane for even a moment during the daytime Ramadan, that breaks the fast. Unconsciousness and unlawful intoxications if they last for the entire day. So if somebody's, like we said, intoxicated or unconscious for the entire day, that breaks their fast. Yeah. Not sleeping, sorry. Sleeping the entire day does not break their fast. Intoxication and unconsciousness for the entire day does. It is best to hasten breaking the fast when one is certain that the sun has set. The sunnah when eating suhoor is to wait as long as, to wait till the end, to wait till before Fajr enters, and leave about 10 to 20 minutes before it enters, just to be safe. The Sahaba, they would wait 50 ayahs of Surah Al-Baqarah, which you can assume is about 10 to 20 minutes. They would wait. They would stop eating before Ramadan comes in, just to be safe. Okay? So that's something that's recommended. Now when it comes to breaking fast, you want to do that as soon as possible after you're certain, key word, certain the sun has set. When you're certain the sun has set, it's always good to wait another 2 or 3 extra minutes just in case. Then it's sooner to rush to break their fast. But not before you're certain. Is it set or not? Is it set it when it's time? I don't know. What if somebody is doing their wudu and only does on the 3rd time, without exaggerating, accidentally swallows water? What happens? Yeah. Huh? continues his fast, does he break it? Without exaggerating, on his third time, swallows water accidentally.
No.
Doesn't break your fast. And no sin, and he does he make it up? Doesn't have to make it up. The breaking of fast in Ramadan are 4 types in respect to rulings. Wajib, obligatory, like for a woman who experiences menstruation or postnatal bleeding. So it's obligatory for a woman who has menstruation or postnatal bleeding to break her fast. How does she do that? Huh? Let me ask you that question. That is a good question. How does a woman who has menstruation or postnatal bleeding come in the daytime of Ramadan, how does she break her fast? Huh? Snicker bar, huh? Just eat a Snicker bar. That's the only way to do it. It is technically broken, but she has to. But she could say, well, I'm just going to fast the rest of the day. It's broken, yes, it doesn't count. But she could say, I'm still fasting the rest of the day. And then that would be a sin, actually. Because she can't fast or intend to fast during the daytime of Ramadan. So how does she break her fast? She has to eat her greens already. Intention. Simply by making an intention. She intends to break her fast. That's it. And she's no longer fasting. It's when she continues the intention of fasting when she can't, that's the problem. Permissible like a traveler and a sick person. That's when it's permissible to break your fast. If you're traveling or you're sick, we will discuss the details of that. That which is neither wajib or permissible, like insanity. It's not wajib to break your fast, nor is it permissible to break your fast if you're insane. Okay? Haram, like the one who delays the making up of Ramadan despite having the capability to do so until the time does not permit. So, when somebody has makeup days, they have to make those up before the next Ramadan. Or they have to make them up before the next Ramadan enters with the time allotted. In other words, if they have 7 days to make up, they have to make those up before there's 7 days left before Ramadan. Or during those 7 days. So if they say, well, the 6 days I'm going to make them up, well, that's too late already. You still got to do it. But it becomes a sin if you delay your makeup fast until the next Ramadan. And if you do that, you wait till the next Ramadan. 1, there's a sin. 2, you still got to make up the days. And 3, you got to now pay a mud for every day that you didn't make up. Right? The 509 grams of food to the local community, or the value of points of Hanafi method, which is about $19 for every day. It's not that much. Which goes to the poor and needy Muslims. So the point here is if you have makeup days without an excuse, you have to make them up immediately. And if you have makeup days with an excuse, you have all the way till next Ramadan. But you want to do it before you die. You don't know when you're going to die, so the sooner the better. Someone obliged to make up some fast days of Ramadan is recommended to do so consecutively and immediately. So consecutively and immediately is a recommendation. I got 7 days to make up. Okay, consecutively and immediately is a recommendation if you have an excuse. It is not permissible for a person with some unperformed fast days of Ramadan to delay making them up until the next Ramadan unless there is an excuse for delay. Unless they have a valid excuse for delay until the next Ramadan. For example, they're traveling over here. Well, that's a valid excuse for traveling. So they have an excuse not to make it up until next year. The types of breaking the fast are 4. The things that are qada and fidya, wajib are 2. So what's qada? Make up. What's fidya? Who knows what fidya is? Fidya? Yeah, it's like a penalty / expiation. Yeah. So there are things that make qada and fidya obligatory too. So you have to pay, and you have to make up your fast. Breaking the fast due to fear of harm for others. He's going to go into more detail about that. Breaking the fast and thereafter delaying to make up for it until the next Ramadan. Breaking the fast and then delaying the make up until the next Ramadan, which we just talked about. You have to pay the fidya and you have to make up the day. And it's a sin. Those for which qada is compulsory but not the fidya, like the one who is unconscious the entire day, they have to make up that day, but they don't have to pay fidya. Those for which fidya is compulsory but not qada, like a very old man. A very old man who's too weak, or an old woman who's too weak to fast, they have to pay the fidya, which is a mud every day, but they don't have to do qada. So somebody who's really old and too weak to fast, they just pay 30 muds, 30 fidyas, as an expiation for them fasting, and they don't have to make up any of those days. That which is neither wajib nor permissible, like the insane person whose insanity is not caused by transgression. Again, it's not wajib or permissible, it's the person who's insane. So what is it here? according to the first footnote, one must pay 509 grams of food to the poor of each fast day missed in addition to making it up. A woman who is breastfeeding a baby or is pregnant and apprehends harm to herself or her child may omit the fast and make it up later, though if she omits it because of fear of harm for the child alone, not for herself, then she must give 509 grams of food in charity for each day missed as an expiation in addition to making up that each day. So basically, here's how it works. If somebody breaks their fast because of harm to somebody else, then they have to, one, make up that day, and two, pay the fidya, which is a mud. Okay? What's an example? They say a woman breaks her fast because she fears for her child. Whether she's pregnant and she fears for the child, or she's breastfeeding and she fears for the child. Now, is it okay for women to fast while being pregnant and breastfeeding? Yes, it is. And I've seen there's many women who have done that and can do that. And that's what's recommended. But women have different pregnancies. They have different struggles in feeding their children. And so therefore it's a case-by-case scenario. It's not a one-size-fits-all generalization to everybody. Yes, the origin and the desired ideal state would be for her to fast while pregnant and breastfeeding. Actually, it can be healthy for her and the child. And I've seen many examples of it, especially like studying abroad. But if she has a difficult pregnancy or difficulty feeding her child, and she fears harm to the child, and she feels harm to the child from the pregnancy or from breastfeeding or wherever it may be, then she can break her fast and she's excused to do so. Without sin, she breaks her fast, she's excused to do so, but she must, when she can, make up that day and pay the fidya, which is a mud or like $9 to $10, because she did it because of fearing harm of somebody else. If you fear harm for yourself and your health and your sickness, you can break your fast and just make up the day without having to pay fidya. But if it's for somebody else, another example they give from Ed, you see somebody drowning and you want to save their life, but you don't have any energy because you're really weak today from fasting. They say, can you break your fast? Sure, you're saving somebody's life. That's a priority. You break your fast, eat something, get some energy, and go swim after them. But since you did it because of somebody else, you have to make up the day without any sin, excuse, and you have to pay the bill because it's for somebody else. So that's the distinction, is what's for somebody else and what's for ourselves. Making a mistake, when making up, if a fast day is delayed until the second Ramadan comes, then one must also pay additional mud that we talked about to be paid for that day. A person who is forced to fast, his fast will not break because he's not responsible for what he's been forced to do. So somebody who is forced to fast. Somebody who's forced to fast, to break their fast, they're excused. And they can continue fasting and they don't have to make up that day. Okay? Makes sense, right? Break your fast from Mashuchi. Okay, I'll break my fast. You're forced to do so, therefore you're not responsible. The other person gets to sin for it, not you. And then you continue fasting if you can after that, and you do not break your fast technically, and you can continue and you don't have to make up that day. And then the last section is the things which by reaching the stomach do not break the fast are 7, and this is the last section of the 5th course. That which reaches the body cavity out of forgetfulness, ignorance, or force. So if something reaches the body cavity, forgetfulness, ignorance, like we said, the non-Muslim case doesn't know, or the new Muslim case, or somebody out in the middle of the desert without scholars and knowledge doesn't know, or force. Somebody forces you to consume something, then this does not break your fast. The mixing of saliva with what is between the teeth, and he is unable to discharge it, is therefore excused. So the other one is, sometimes you eat sahur and there's things between your teeth. Okay? Now you're supposed to use a toothpick or toothbrush to remove that before you start fasting. But if you have like a piece of meat or something stuck in between your teeth, and you can't get it out, or you don't get it out, and then you start fasting because the daytime is now entered, and that piece dislodges and comes into your mouth, then if you are able to spit it out, it's obligatory for you to spit it out. If you are able to spit it out and you don't, and you swallow it, you accidentally, you break your fast. You got to continue fasting and make it out. But if it dislodges and you don't have the ability to spit it out and you accidentally swallow it, it doesn't break your fast. And you continue fasting. Does that make sense? The dust of the road which reaches to the body cavity, and the dust of sifted flour or flies, etc., will reach the body. So dust in the road does not break your fast and shacking out. So even if you're walking or whatever, let's say it's a desert, there's a lot of dust. It doesn't break your fast. Opening, putting your mouth in front of air conditioner doesn't break your fast. Putting your mouth open and the dust comes doesn't break your fast. Also, the scholars say there's There's a big flour too. You're making something, flour gets in, you consume, the flour goes into your mouth, it doesn't break your fast. Flies. You yawn and a fly accidentally, this happens. It happens. It's happened to me. You yawn and a fly right into your mouth while you're fasting. That actually does not break your fast unless you're able to spit it out. Again, the same description here, that if you're able to spit out the fly, then spit it out. It's obligatory. If you're not able to, you accidentally swallow it, it does not break your fast. Right? That doesn't mean eat flies. And then it says, flour, through an open passageway, the deliberate intake of anything besides air. Through an open passageway, we said, are many. The deliberate intake of anything besides air or saliva into the body cavity, the fast, food, etc. provided this is after having cleaned between them, after eating, by using a toothpick or the like between them. So he's just talking about the description of the food dislodged from your teeth, which we already talked about, and so forth. So this is the end of the fifth section of the program, and basically the end of the program altogether. We started obviously to do the merits and then the rulings of Ramadan and break it up into two different sections. And then inshallah we will also leave some time for Q&A as well from brothers and sisters. I already have actually a list of cards here, and if anybody has any verbal questions that they would like to ask, are welcome to do so, inshallah. And inshallah, again, inshallah, we all benefited from this, and inshallah we apply this and use it in a practical way every day of our life. The whole point of this program is not just to learn information and go, inshallah, now I know more than I knew before. The whole point is to practically apply that which you learn. There's almost no point in coming and learning without actually trying to apply that which you've learned today. And in everything we do, because it's either going to be a proof for us or against us on the day of judgment. Now that you know, it's a proof, did you do it, did you act right or not, or was there proof for you that you did, and so forth, therefore testifies on your behalf. So may Allah give us tawfiq to apply this knowledge, to implement this knowledge, to benefit from this knowledge. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us a sound and valid fast, and give us success in Ramadan, and a very blessed Ramadan for us and our families. May He give us complete shifa outwardly and inwardly. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the best of states in the akhirah. May we be able to be happy to present our fast to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment. May He buy our fast interest in the highest levels of paradise and Jannah for those with the companionship of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his companions. May He enter us at the right hand, the gates of paradise reserved specifically for those who fast only for His sake. Ya Allah, please enter us into the gates of Rayhan and give us the entrance into there. Ya Allah, please ennoble us by gazing upon your noble countenance. Ya Allah, please give us the strength and the ability to get through fasting and overcome the weakness and the tiredness and fatigue. Give us the strength and the struggles and so forth. Let us overcome all obstacles for your sake, and let us make this a spiritual month for us that raises us and ascends us in proximity to you and purifies our heart and purifies our nufus, our lower and evil selves. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us in this life and the next life, and may He be pleased with us in this life and the next life, and may He make us true servants of His religion and serving Him and His religion and His ummah and the community with all goodness and gentleness and well-being. Wa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam Muhammadin wa alihi wa sallam.